want to be your friend who really want to hurt you and abuse you. But we have to tell our kids that, right? Because we understand that not everyone who smiles and shakes your hand and appears to be your friend indeed is. But quite the opposite. There are many people who appear to be your friend, who appear to have your best interest at heart, who have quite the opposite interest, which is hurting you, destroying you, okay? And false prophets here are not asking for a few bucks from these disciples. He's not asking them for a little bit of their life. These false prophets are asking of these disciples an allegiance and a submission to something which is antithetical to what God's trying to do. He's asking them for a matter in their life which is ultimately life and death. He understands that the threat is a very real one and a dangerous one. And the point I'm trying to make here is this, that not everyone who claims to be a follower of God and who claims to speak for God indeed does. And I want you to understand that not everyone who has the title Reverend before their name and who smiles and who's able to pray softly is indeed somebody who speaks for God. Okay? Now these disciples, and again, this is what Jesus is seeing in his disciples. His disciples are basically saying, I have no idea whether this person speaks for God or not. All I can see is that he appears so. All I can do as a disciple, all his disciples were able to do was to judge the outside, the appearance. And that's how most Christians are today. Most Christians are not able to judge a message by the substance of it, but they can only judge it by the manner. Yeah, that person looks like a reverend. He appears to have his act together. He's got a degree from a school. He speaks well. He smiles. He appears loving to me. He appears to be a good man. He appears to be for God. And appearances are, he's saying, look, I can't believe you disciples are able to be deceived by a wolf dressed in sheep's clothing. He says you need to be able to dig deeper than what you see in the appearance. You have to be able to judge the substance of what they're saying. Okay? So that was the first weakness he saw in his disciples, was their immaturity, their inability to look beyond what was on the surface. And I fear that for a lot of you as well. I'm afraid that for many of you, you're unable to adequately judge the substance of what a lot of people are writing in books and preaching on television and so forth, because for you, you're going to take at value, you're going to just take what they're saying because of the fact that they've been ordained by somebody, or that they appear to be godly. Okay? Well, the second thing, the second weakness I believe that Christ is identifying in them by warning them about false prophets is their willingness, the disciples' willingness to be deceived. You all know this very well, that for a lie to work, that lie has to appeal to some desire in the person you're lying to, right? Women are really good at this with men, and men are really good at this with women. When you're lying to them, if you want them to buy that lie, you have to make that lie something which they really want. Okay? Like the serpent in the garden. When the serpent lied to Adam and Eve in the garden, or to Eve particularly, he had to make that lie appeal to something in Eve, in Adam, that they really wanted all along. He was appealing to their pride and to their selfishness, right? And because he knew that inherent somewhere in Adam and Eve was this desire to be like God, to be free of restraint, to be autonomous, he crafted a lie which kind of appealed to something they already wanted, and so they were more apt to believe it. Well, we're all very willing to be deceived, okay? And there are a lot of things out there which these false prophets, these lies, these people working for Satan, frankly, who are crafting lies which are predicated in something that we really want anyway. And so we're more apt to believe these things that they're preaching because we like what it produces in our lives, whether it gives us some kind of a moral license or a freedom to do something that we have felt constrained that we couldn't do, or whether or not it freed you up from some task that typically you saw as part of the Christian life, which now you don't have to do anymore or don't have to be about. And Jesus saw in his disciples that there was a willingness in the disciples to be deceived about certain things. That there were certain things inherent in their hearts and minds which were not in accord with what God wanted. And that all it would take from one of these false prophets is to come and tell them a lie which appealed to something that they already wanted, which would shipwreck and derail everything they were trying to accomplish. Okay? And so he's warning them, listen, there are false prophets. You need to understand, not everything anybody's going to tell you is absolutely true. This warning is primary, first and foremost. It's a call to self-examination. Okay? And even though I know that it says beware of false prophets, I think what Jesus is actually saying is beware yourself. Okay? Are you prepared to listen to a lie and know it's a lie and reject it? Or are you not prepared? Are you not capable of identifying lies and doing anything about it? The second, and that leads to the second point, that he's something they can do with this warning. And that second thing is to judge yourself. They were to judge themselves, and we are to judge ourselves. Look at verses 16 and 17. Jesus says, now listen, you will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? Even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. Now, much has been made, and appropriately and rightfully so, about the importance that Native Americans played in the survival of the Pilgrims, right? We're getting close to Thanksgiving time, and you're going to remember and be told all over again the story of the first Thanksgiving. I've read about it and seen things on it. It's a remarkable thing. And it's very clear that these Pilgrims, when they came to the United States, or what we call America today, this was indeed a new world for them. Okay? There were things here in this world which were so foreign to them, so strange, that they really were ignorant as to what in this world was good for them and bad for them. And indeed, a lot of the things that people use for staples here, as far as food, they'd never seen before. They'd never seen corn before, or potatoes, or rhubarb. There were all different kinds of varieties of apples they'd never seen. There were all kinds of fruits and vegetables which the Native Americans and which the people living here were eating, which they'd never seen before. And because of that, they didn't know how properly to grow them, and they weren't able to identify what was healthy and unhealthy. They weren't able to judge what a good ear of corn was and what a blighted ear of corn was. They'd never seen it before. And because they were entirely ignorant of the fruits here in the New World, they had to have somebody else show them. So they needed the Native Americans. Well, the point I'm making here is how are you, if Jesus is saying that there's a threat on your life, and the threat is a false prophet, and your way of identifying a false prophet is by judging their fruits, how are you going to go about judging whether these prophets that you're listening to are false or not if you don't know what the fruit is? Does that make sense?